Hello, good evening. My name's Lisa, and you get the treat of my testimony this week. It's been so cool looking at and watching and hearing about everybody's testimony and what God has done in their lives. It's such a treat to hear the way God is moving, the way God is working and has worked, and you know that God is still working that way today in people's lives. I'm married to John in church, who gave his testimony way back near the beginning. Got 4 lovely children, 4 little cookies that are all running around in church. My mum is Anne, the lady that gave her testimony last week, and my dad is Dick, that's in church as well. My sister Helen, that runs the youth. At first, when Michael said, "Could I give my testimony this week?" I was like, "Follow me, mother, and her miracles." But there is a good link. There is a good link, because today, what I want to speak to you about, what God's done in my life, it shows again my mother's persistent prayer. I wouldn't be standing here today telling you this if it wasn't for my mother and the way she stood. And because she thanked the Lord, my mother keeps on breaking through in prayer. Because today I want to tell you and remind you that God is a redeemer. God is a redeemer, and he redeems. He always redeems, and I thank the Lord for that. You know, at my baptism when I was about 18, 19, the verse that I was given was, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," from Philippians. And you know, it's such an amazing verse. And at the time, yes, God was helping me do things, and he carries on. Because before that, yeah, I'll tell you all about that now. If I told you the phrase that my granddad used to say to my mum about me was, "Anne, you need to break her will, but not her spirit." And my grandma's phrase, the lady you heard my mum talk about with the miracle last week, was, "There was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was horrid." And that's from 2 people that loved me dearly. So you can see they loved me, but that was that was the things they used to say. You know, I was, and I am, and can be very strong-willed, very determined. You know, and it can be used for good, or it can be used to keep yourself on a pathway to destruction, because you keep yourself in that determined, "I'm going to keep going." And that's how, for a long time, I used that predominantly in my life, rather than using it for good. I do believe God has turned it around, and now there is a self-determination, or not self-determination, a determination and a will to keep on going that God uses for him now. Because there were times that I was challenging. There were definite times I was very challenging to my parents. John thinks all the bad bits of our 4 children and me mixed up. Maybe that some of it is. But you know, I grew up the eldest of 3. The lovely Helen is my youngest sister, and we grew up in a Christian home, in a great church family down south. I joined the Girls Brigade the day I was 5. And this is the thing of me wanting to get. I got every single badge it was possible to get. Everything for Sundays, everything for the work we did during the week, the work we did with younger ones, everything that I could possibly get, I got. And that was like full armband of badges. That's the way I wanted to be, that you get and you do all that you can. I only left there when I went off to university, because it was harder to get out of than any Mexican street gang, as Sarah and Helen will testify to as well. You know, I mock them and all that it was, but it was the only thing, apart from mum and dad, that kept me in a constant relationship with God, and kept me in a constant contact, as it were, with the outside world in lots of ways as well. Because I was that nightmare child that wouldn't go to school. I loved primary, that was all cool, but when I moved at 8 or 9 to middle school, it all started to go downhill. It was all pretty, yeah, I was not a joy of a child on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or Friday morning to be going to school. I'd have stomach aches, headaches, all different kinds of pain to try and get out of school. And it was real, the pain was real, but I just could not be going into school. I couldn't get in. Mum and Dad were working with school. And as I got older, it got worse and worse. You know, as when I wasn't too old, my mum could manhandle me into the car, as it were, and get me into school. Once I was in, I had to cope with it and I had to get on with it and things. There were times, but you know, but of course, as I grew up, as I got older, that was less and less possible. I spent an awful lot of time at my grandma's house, where my mum had to then be in school herself. And as I entered high school, it really got worse. It was far, far worse. By this point, I could be absolutely vile in the mornings. I would scream and shout and fight and do anything I could not to get outside of the front door, not to be taken outside the front door, not to be forced out. My mum and dad, man, what they had to put up with me then. And thank goodness, one side our neighbours were deaf and the other side we weren't joined to anybody else, because yeah, you didn't want to hear the noise that was going on in there. By the time I got to my GCSE year, my final year in school, my mum worked out that probably if I managed to be in school for 8 weeks in total of that entire year, that's on the good side, on the positive side of stuff. That was about all I did. I would want to sleep during the day and I would read all night. I got work done, stuff was sent home, and by God's mercy and grace at times, I at least got that done. Mum and I were going to a Christian counsellor to talk things through. She was amazing, an absolutely amazing woman that helped me through. We saw her for a good few years, and she would talk through, allow me to talk, allow my mum to talk, because I mean the things I was putting my mum through were just awful, and my dad, and for my mum to be able to talk through this godly woman as well was amazing. I did manage to get my GCSEs through a lot of prayer and support. I managed to get in. I did my exams and I had my GCSEs. I had no idea what I wanted to do after that, apart from never go near an education institution again. But God had different plans. For a while I was on the dole. I got to the point I really did want to go and be a paramedic, but they weren't recruiting at that point. So I ended up on the dole, and then ended up fairly swiftly after that, because being on the dole wasn't nice, ending up on a YTS scheme. And for those of you not as old as myself, it's a little bit like the schemes now. It's called a youth training scheme. And so I got a little bit of money whilst I was off doing stuff. And I ended up in schools, would you believe? Ended up in primary schools and working and being trained to work with young children. Still would find it extremely difficult to go out. There were still times that I missed more of that time than I should have done. Still put my mother in an embarrassing position with the people that were running those courses far too many times. And I think there were times that they wanted to just chuck me off that course. But there was, in my second year of doing that, there was a lady called Shirley, a teacher that I worked with, that she saw something and she stuck up for me. Otherwise, I don't think I would have even had that as any kind of success in any way. And it was actually during doing that, because when I was in, I was good at what I was doing, and they told me that I should go and train to be a teacher. And by the end, I'd worked round to doing something like that maybe, and God had worked even by that point miracles in me compared to what I was. So I went then and I did my A-levels late, a few years late, but did my A-levels, got those, and got into university in South Wales. So it was going away from home. So that became a point at which I had to depend on God. I had to get to that point of dependence on Him. My parents received a lot of phone calls. I used to stand in the corridor on the old the phones, the communal phones, chatting to my dad, chatting to my mum for ages. And there were times, yeah, I was still a nightmare. Because it was during all this time that God, back through the times with the Christian counsellor, and as I was doing the YTS and beyond, that God started to really highlight what the roots of the problem were. And it was fear and perfectionism. Because if I was worried in any way that I wouldn't achieve success at a high level for what I needed to do, then I wouldn't even start it. There's no point starting. If you're going to fail at it, don't even begin it. If I could possibly come out at the end failing, then I wouldn't even begin to put the effort in to try it. You know, over the years, God has taught me that to go for excellence. I've never stopped going for excellence in the things that I do, and doing it with him, going for that excellence with him in all things. But perfectionism, that's who he is. He can do that, and he does it well. That's his bag. That's God's bag. It's not mine. I can't do it. He's the one that is perfect. He is the one that does all things perfect. And he helps me go for excellence, and he is with me to do that. So in all that, as I was going on, and when I went to university, I was away from my parents, away from my family. I had good friends around, but it was during that first year I went a little bit crazy with doing things that involved a little bit too much alcohol and things like that. But not, I didn't go right off the rails, but I did stuff I shouldn't. And looking back, make for maybe a funny story, but it wasn't God's best for me. But even though I messed up that, God brought it back, because even in those 3 years I was at university, by the final year I was asked to be president of the Christian Union there, and I was able to ask Michael to come up to preach, and with his help we was then able to actually do a campus-wide just giving the gospel to everyone. Every single room on that campus had a gospel tract dropped in. We had a week of events and stuff, and God redeemed what started out as me looking a bit of a nightmare at uni even, but God redeemed it. God redeemed it, and I came out with a good degree, and I was able to get a good job. Again, God worked. I'm rubbish at interviews, but God worked it for me to be in the most amazing place. And he worked it for me to be in a place where I was allowed to do far more than I ever should have been able to. I was able to speak for God in assemblies. I was head of RE and pushed stuff through that never would have been pushed through for a whole school of children to do. And just I was able in RE lessons, in my classroom, to have things not said that I didn't want said to those children, and also go much further with things that I wanted to say for God, and I knew God wanted. You know, all those years of, so God redeemed that, made that into something far better than 13, 14, 15 I could ever have dreamt when I was looking at a pathway of doing nothing, basically. There I was with a good job. God redeems all. He kept that relationship with my parents. I was disgusting. I was horrible. But God kept that relationship, and he kept it, and now it's an amazing relationship with my parents. So amazing with them. And that's because God redeems. God keeps it, and God redeems it and makes it better, I believe, than it ever could have been anyway. God truly does restore. I'm stood here saying that God truly does restore all that the locust will try and take, all that the devil tries to take away from you. God, with him, it comes back. God brings it back. He turned my life around completely, from not ever really going out, not ever really wanting to go out. I didn't want to interact with the outside world. From all of those things, from being on a pathway to nowhere, to nothing, to being nothing and not being worried about it in a way as well. He got me to that place of living life well with him, getting my teaching degree, getting a great job, going to Bible college, and now with a family of my own. And today I want to say, don't give up. If you're the parent of a child and you're praying and you are praying and you are praying, don't give up. God redeems. God brings it back. God redeems. Don't give up. My mum had to pray for a lot of years, but God broke through. And if you're the person that is on that downward spiral, don't give up. Keep looking to God. Keep looking to him to be your all in all. Keep looking to him for the help to come out of it. Keep looking to him for the pathway to come out of it, because he will. You can get out because God can do it. And may I just read you a few words from Psalm 139, a few different bits from it. It says, Lord, you know everything there is to know about me. You perceive every movement of my heart and my soul, and you understand my every thought before it even enters my mind. You are so intimately aware of me, Lord. You read my heart like an open book. You know every step I will take before my journey even begins. You've gone into my future to prepare the way, and in kindness you follow behind me to spare me from the harm of my past. Whatever's happened in your past, God comes behind you. He makes the difference, because in kindness you follow behind me to spare me from the harm of my past. Your past doesn't dictate you. God dictates who you are. With your hand of love upon my life, you impart a blessing to me. This is just too wonderful, deep and incomprehensible. Your understanding of me brings me wonder and strength. You saw who you created me to be before I became me, before I'd ever seen the light of day. The number of days you planned for me were already recorded in your book. Every single moment you are thinking of me. How precious and wonderful to consider that you cherish me constantly in your every thought. And here's the thing. See if there is any path of pain that I'm walking on, and lead me back to your glorious, everlasting ways, a path that brings me back to you. God can do it. I am stood here as a testimony to that. God redeems. Praise his name, the redeeming God. Amen. Thank you ever so much for listening. Bye.